in the contest tonight by Mary Davis, and the title is Genes.
A story is told of a family who hired a professional genealogist to trace their family tree. They were concerned about a certain Uncle George, a convicted murderer who was sent to the electric chair. But the genealogist came up with a brilliant solution. I will say that Uncle George occupied the chair of a very important government institution. He was attached to that chair by the strongest of ties, and his death came as a real shock. Indeed, Mark Twain has said he spent a lot of money tracing his family tree, then twice as much trying to keep it a secret. But I've always been interested in history, especially local or family history. When my children were young, I tried to instill my love of history in them. I would drag them along to museums or whatever, but I was always greeted with wails of boring. But now they're all grown up, I decided to trace my family tree. For I believe that we are all products of our past. Our own past, that of our own family, our ancestors, and our country of origin. Look around this countryside. There are ruins, castles, old abbeys, churches, stone cottages. They remind us all of a tragic and traumatic past. We are the descendants of saints and scholars, martyrs and patriots. We are the representatives of a persecuted and plundered race. But it's inheritance is all about, not just about inheriting a crooked nose or a baldy head. It's also about the real legacy of our ancestors is a set of beliefs and attitudes that have been handed down to us from generation to generation. Now, if you want to trace your family tree, you can do so from the comfort of your own home, because all the archives are now online. But for me, you can't beat physically tracing the steps of your ancestors, be it where they lived, where they worked, where they loved, and ultimately where they were laid to rest. Now, unfortunately, I am not connected to any patriots, freedom fighters, or even murderers. I certainly won't be starring in any of the TV programs such as Who Do You Think You Are? But I'm in good company. Michael Parkinson, the broadcaster, has said that the program Who Do You Think You Are was looking into his family history, but after 6 days it was abandoned because he was so boring. But I am proud to say that I am from a long line of small farmers and small business people. My people were dispossessed, like a lot of people of their time, and left with small holdings on which to eke out an existence. They started selling seed potatoes from their front door, and this gradually developed into a small country business and pub. I could trace back the license to sell liquor issued to my great-grandfather in 1885. But what fascinated me most was that they survived in an area devastated by famine and emigration. They survived against the odds. Was it because they lived beside the sea and ate turnips and fish when the potato crop failed? Were they of a strong constitution? Or were they just lucky? I am here today because my direct line inherited on my father's side the small family farm, and on my mother's side a small country pub. Many of my relatives, as was the norm in those times, emigrated. Some became priests and nuns. It was their only chance of an education. But what was apparent to me was how hard their lives were. They were resourceful. They seized opportunity. They were decent, hard-working people, and they made the best of what they had. People helped each other out, and they had a very strong sense of place and belonging. I hope that I, at least, have inherited some of those traits. So, in the course of my research, I had the opportunity to visit relatives I hadn't seen for years. It was wonderful to relive the past through living relatives. My own mother spoke of a time never mentioned before. She told me how her 2 brothers, 2 children, were tragically killed within a couple of years of each other. This emotionally crippled the whole family and had a profound effect on her childhood. There were no self-help books in those days or counselling. People just had to get on with it as best as they could. She opened up to me in a way she had never done before, and it led me to a greater understanding of her and our family. Many people believe there is a direct relationship between our past family history and personal difficulties. They believe that traumas and unhappiness that have happened in the past just don't die with those who were the initial victims or sufferers, but can reverberate right down through the family tree. Indeed, some psychologists now use a therapy called ancestral healing, where we are encouraged to face up and deal with the negative aspects of our family history and help us to move forward and become whole human beings. For it is knowing where we come from that we learn where we are and where we are going to. So yes, I have my family tree in place for the generations who will follow on after me. It may be a more complicated issue for the next generation, what with divorce, same-sex marriages, surrogates, sperm donors. Where will it end? But I am assured that the documentation of my family history will continue. For I was talking to my 4-year-old granddaughter last week. She was very excited about a trip they had just had. She says, "I was in a fantastic place yesterday." I said, "Yes, where?" She stopped for a minute while she chose her words carefully. It was called a museum. Now that's what I call genius.